Where were you born? Were you born at home, in a hospital, and what year?
I was born at home at Avonston, about 2 miles north of Avonston, on May the 25th, 1928, and I weighed 10.5 pounds.
Did you?
I was the biggest baby Mom had. I was actually so big, my dad was planting corn, and I walked down there and told him.
Did anybody help Grandma deliver you?
I guess the doctor.
Was there a doctor that came to the house?
Yeah.
Okay.
To deliver him. And well, then the doctor asked what they wanted to name me, so they called me Raymond. And then, well, that was okay until my sponsors took me to the church to get me baptized. And the priest said, no, you cannot call him Raymond. You got to call him something else. And well, they didn't have no phones them days, so my two sponsors, they looked at each other, what will we call him? Then my one sponsor, he said, well, I got a hard hand and he's a hard worker. Let's name him after him. So that's where I got my name from.
Yeah. How did Grandma feel about this?
Well, they had to accept me. And when I wanted to go to Germany that time to visit them, I had to get a passport, and I couldn't get it because they didn't have me listed any place.
Really?
They had a Raymond Wilke, so we had to go to Springfield and get papers made out. I was lucky my dad was living yet, and we had to get them papers filled out.
No kidding.
I didn't know that either.
It's the only way I could get a passport.
Isn't that something? Wow. Okay, how many brothers and sisters did you have, and where were you in the lineup?
I was the third oldest, and there was 5 sisters and 3 brothers. And my one sister died when she was about 2 weeks old. And she was born on my birthday. I was
Really?
6 years old when she was born.
Wow.
And my dad took me to the priest to get registered for school. And the priest said, oh, you got a nice little sister. And I said, yeah, I hope she dies. And she died in 10 days.
That was it.
I wanted a brother. I already had a sister. Or 2 sisters I had already.
No, you only had one sister.
No,
Or she would have been the second.
when she was born. See, I had Jen and Ann, Sister Dolores, and Tekla, 3 of them.
No?
Yeah. Oh,
She
when
was born,
yeah,
she was
right.
between Tekla and Ann.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Her name was Rosemary.
How did she die?
Well, them days, you know, with delivering, you know, a lot of little babies died. They didn't live long. That's why if you look on the cemetery, there's a lot of babies died up until in the 40s. Lots of them.
Infants, yeah.
Okay. What was your life like, Dad, during the Great Depression? How old were you?
When the Depression, well, I remember starting in 1934, then see when I went to school, that's when I remember it was really bad. You didn't have no money, and wasn't nothing unusual to see people walking down the road and asking for a meal.
Really?
And I can remember one time a lady with 2 kids come walking, and it was in the evening, and they slept at our place. They had to sleep in a machine shed, but I think my mom gave them blankets to lay on. But if it was a man, they had to sleep on horse blankets. I don't know, you know what a horse blanket is. Them days in the winter, we had to go to church with horses, and they'd be sweating So you had to cover the horse up during church, and then you uncover them. And that you use that all winter, and you can imagine how they smell.
Any of you, if you all have any questions as he's talking about this, ask him. Okay?
Them days, nobody had money, and Breeze, they had a coal mine, and in the summer, they wouldn't need coal, so the coal miners, they'd come walking down the road and ask the farmer if they could work for $1 for a day, and some of them would give them. I can remember one of them, my dad told me he could dig the garden, and that we had big gardens them days that take all day, and I'd walk along with him when he's digging, and finally he told me, "Quit walking along, you're stomping that dirt so tight that I can't get it loose."
Guy's a little kid, I'm sure it was.
And you were just a kid.
Yeah, I was just a kid, and nobody really had money. Like come about August, we didn't have no meat and hardly nothing, and you couldn't buy any because you didn't have money. So my dad would every morning shoot a couple of rabbits. That's what we ate. And the rabbits was just plentiful. You could just go out there and shoot them. And I can remember one time when I went with my dad, he seen two of them sitting side by side, and he laid on the ground with a rifle, and he shot through their heads.
What bullets cost money?
Hey, you got sick.
Yeah,
You had to.
Well, you had to buy them.
Yeah, exactly.
It was them 22 shorts.
Okay.
And well, them days, you wouldn't go to the store except you'd buy sugar and flour. Well, flour you'd buy in 100 pounds, sugar you'd buy in 100-pound sacks, and corn meal. I can remember where my dad would go in the corn bin and get corn, and you could take ears of corn to town and get it ground up for cornmeal. And he also, once in a while when we had wheat, he'd take wheat out the bin and go to Trenton. They had a place there where you could grind it up for flour. And And
then when they put it in that sack, didn't you use those sacks for something?
Oh yeah.
What would you use them for?
Well, at one time later on, then they start putting your feed in colored sacks. And then you use them for dresses and shirts and stuff like that. Like, I never had a new shirt.
Yeah, how did you get clothes? How did you get clothes?
Well, we had a store here in town.
Okay.
He had maybe about 2-3 different colors. In school, everybody had the same colored shirts, and the girls all had the same colored dresses because go to the store and you just won't.
So, like your mom would make your clothes?
Yeah, mom would sew.
What about jeans and pants? Would they
Jeans,
make
we
that
buy
kind?
that.
Okay. What about shoes?
We get one pair a year.
One pair a year.
That's why I got
Not like Nike. He could have used Nike.
That's why I got such a crooked feet. I could not see my folks buying these shoes all the time, so I just kept wearing them, and I got such a crooked toes from that. But I didn't want my folks to spend any money on my shoes. And you didn't have credit cards them days.
No.
If you would have had a credit card, you couldn't have ever paid it anyway. And I heard on the radio the other day that people owe $1 trillion in credit cards. And when you don't pay it, it adds up. And it only happened to me one time, as long as I'm living, that I didn't pay off my whole credit card, and that was because my daughters would write out the checks.
Not me!
I'm going to say it was. She's the shortest one.
I had to pay.
When I got the bill, I thought I'd never use my credit card.
Plus interest.
Once in his whole life, Anderson.
Grandpa, I have a question for you. So you're what they would refer to as the greatest generation, and I have a lot of admiration for that time period. The generation is very impressive with what they accomplished, the things they had seen, and also just the vast difference in the time period that their life has spanned in society. If you had any advice for what's the millennial generation, the newer generation coming up, what would it be coming from your generation to the newcomers?
Yeah. Well, don't buy anything you can't pay for.
Any stock advice?
That's what we always did. We would never bought anything that we couldn't pay for. I borrowed money 2 times in my life. That was when I bought my first car. When I grew up, everything you earned, you had to give to your parents until you was 21. Then you get a little spending money. And when I was 21, after, I guess it was in May, I was 21 in September, then my dad said, it's time you buy a car. So I had to buy a car, and I bought one for $500 a used one. I didn't hardly have any money except because I wasn't earning it. But getting $100 a month, and you wouldn't be able to save too much. Only worked almost 4 months. So I bought that, and then Dad paid for that. And then
you had to pay him back?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then in January, well, that car that I bought was using so much oil, so I bought a new one. And I bought that for $1,688. I bought it from Ford. And then I had to borrow money.
Well, like, if you had to give your dad the money you earned as a kid, wouldn't he give you the money then for your car? I mean, why did you have to pay him for the car if you gave him your salary?
That was the style. You worked, and when you was 21 until you gave your folks your money. Well, I started working out when I was 11 years old.
Yeah.
I earned $5 a month.
What did you do for $5 a month?
Work. A lot of work. The lady made sure that I done everything. She had 3 kids, and I had to do that. I had to milk cows, feed the chickens, feed the hogs, cut the lawn.
How did you find the job, and how did you get there?
I walked.
Did you walk?
Every morning and evening I walked. We only lived about a mile from us.
Okay.
And then when I was 12 years old, then I worked for a different guy for $5 a month. And we went to 5 picnics, and he gave me a quarter for each picnic. And I thought, wow, that's good. But at the end of the summer, he deducted, I only got $13.75.
It was in advance.
Well, I'm going to tell you all, too. Dad says how he had to give his dad money when he worked. All the money went to his parents. When I was working, my first job and my second job, I had to give all my money to my parents. And I said, why? And Dad says, because your sisters may not have the opportunity to work like you do. So I had to give him my money. I was making $20 an hour, which was a lot of money. That's because maybe you didn't have to give him money.
$20 an hour? That's pretty good.
$20 a week.
Good job.
I'm going to retire.
$20 an hour. I mean, $20 a week.
What's your next
You know, what
question?
he learned is what he then taught us girls. We had to give our money to them. And we never did get our money back. I didn't.
No.
But through the years, you've given me more than
So
enough.
Grandpa, what did your
It's all now.
sisters do?
Scratch on it.
When I was in 7th grade, that was in 1941, then I worked for a farmer there. Then he didn't say what he'd give me, but at the end of the summer he gave me a calf. And the calf had a black head except a 7 in white on his forehead.
What'd you do with it?
Yeah.
What did you do with your calf? Did you share it
Dad
with...
kept it and raised it.
Okay. So you shared it with your family
No,
then?
I'll see that.
Yeah.
Give everything.
How did you... Robin, go ahead and ask your question.
So you were hired hand. What did your sisters do? Like, did they work outside the
worked
house?
for people too.
They
Yeah.
did.
Like, I remember
They
Grandma.
babysat. Yeah.
your
Okay.
mom Mom, she would go out as a hired helper to women who had a baby.
Yeah.
And they would help raise the other kids or do laundry, work in the house.
And milk cows.
Milk cows.
What kind of people could afford that? I mean,
No, you didn't necessarily
Well, you
pay.
did.
It was just expected of you.
Yeah, you wouldn't get much money. Like, there was a lot of young women when they was out of school till they got married. They worked for different people when they had babies. See, them days, a lot of people had babies, and the woman was not allowed to do very much work for 30 days. So you always worked there for 30 days.
Now, so
Just
just Mom, say when I was born, did she have somebody come in? And
Or no, not when you was born, when Jane was born.
Why was Jane special?
She just couldn't handle Jane. Diane and Lucy, all three. But,
Oh my
but
goodness!
you didn't because
She was the only one.
she always went along to my folks.
Okay.
See, we lived not too far from them. I always, every day, went to my folks, and she'd go along, and my mom took care of you and helped there.
What's your next question?
So, Dad, when did you first get electricity and a phone on your farm?
Electricity.
When you were growing up?
We was 30, in 1938, we got our first electric. And the phone, I guess that was in the 40s, maybe.
Tell us about getting electricity. What was that like?
That was really something. We had one plugging in the house, and we had a radio in the kitchen. And when we had that in spring of the year, that was in spring, I could hear the ball game. We turned it loud so we could hear it outside. And the Cardinals were playing the Cubs, and I never forget that. I
Jeremy?
made up my mind, whoever would win that game, I would be for the team. And I think the Cardinals won 9-0 or 10. Yes! I changed my mind, and now I'm kind of
But they did win the World Series.
Florence is a big Cardinal fan, so I gotta be against something.
What was your house like growing up? I mean, you lived out in the country on a farm.
We didn't have no bathrooms.
Okay. So what would you do when you went to go to the bathroom?
Well, like when we had to go to bed at night, Mom would say, "Okay, go outside first." We all had to go outside and go potty.
Yeah, but then later during the night when you woke up,
You wouldn't have to go. Well, if you had to, then you always had a little pot where you had a.
yeah, but I thought there was one time that you didn't use the pod. Didn't you? Wasn't it on the roof?
Yeah, that was wrong.
Oh, that was wrong.
In the morning, he had to go so bad, so he peed through the window. And my dad was just walking down.
Did he ask if it was raining out that day?
Dad knew what was happening.
So that was the last of that, I suspect.
Never done that. And I'll never forget one time when I went to school, we smoked cigarettes, when somebody gave us cigarettes. And when I come back from school, I had a light went up upstairs, and I had to blow the smoke out the window. And here my dad seen that smoke coming out the window. Oh, he comes storming up with a bucket of water. That's the last cigarette I smoked upstairs.
Kids.
So you kids slept upstairs?
The boys did.
The boys did? Did you have one big room?
One big room up there. Yeah.
Was it finished off?
No, not much. It was just sealed off,
Yeah.
Where did the girls sleep then? Just another room on the first floor?
They had 2 bedrooms downstairs.
So
Well,
right
the
from
girls
there.
had 2, and we had 3 bedrooms. Pretty small bedroom.
Yeah. Okay, man.
So how did you get your food that you ate? Did you have a garden or did you butcher?
Yeah,
Or?
a garden and can, and winter time we butcher 8 hogs usually, and butcher the steer, and then Mom would can roast. You'd even canned roast them days. And
That was good.
Pork sausage, all that stuff. You'd can all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, you didn't have a deep freeze.
No, you didn't have. You had to can it.
Yeah.
We had one room in the basement that was all lined up with canned goods. You know, like in the summer, all of your vegetables and everything, fruit, you canned everything, so you had something to eat.
How many people were you?
What we say, 8 kids.
So 10 people.
Did you ever run out, like before the
Yeah.
next season?
If you run out, you had to.
What would you do?
Like shoot rabbits and stuff like that.
What else would your mom make if you didn't have rabbits?
Cornbread.
Cornbread.
Yeah, cornbread you could make. Like in the fall of the year, you know, we always had summer sausage in the spring, but come fall, we didn't have that. So when you went to school, we didn't have no lunch program. We had to take a lunch bucket.
No lunch
and
program.
you had your choice. You take bread, and you could have your choice. Either put lard on there, or Mom would take water and flour and mix that together, and you could put that on there. You could have your choice.
Sounds very good.
Not much tolerance.
Yeah, we did.
Yummy.
And I always took lard because I like lard. Lunch.
Is that it? All your years in school, just a lard sandwich?
In the fall of the year.
In the fall.
And didn't you have to milk a cow before you went to school?
Yeah, oh yeah. Sure.
Yeah, what time did you get up in the mornings?
Oh, about 5 o'clock, yeah.
And what time did you go to school?
We leave at 7.
And you had to walk?
You had about 3 miles to walk, almost 3 miles. It would take us an hour.
Really?
And one winter, I'll never forget that we one of the places where the Cuckmars lived.
Okay.
They had a pond there, and we seen there was ice on there, so we thought we'd go skate on there. And I run, and I started skating, and I broke through the ice. So I sat in school all day with wet feet. And I didn't get sick, but
So what was school like for you?
school, well, we mostly just had arithmetic, what they call it, math was arithmetic, and spelling, and history, and geography. Yeah.
Like how far in school did you go?
8 years.
8 years. Was that kind of the norm?
Yeah, see, there was hardly none. They started, like in my class, there was 6 up went to high school. They just started having high school at Evanston.
What would they teach you in history class? Like the Revolution then?
Yeah, no. Yeah, about
Civil War?
World War I?
yeah, something like that. History was my favorite. Geography and math.
Mine either.
Well, Dad, so then, I think you already talked about your first job, and how did you find your first job? And how old were you? 13? 11.
11, the first time I went out, yeah. And, well, then when I was out of school, then the war broke out.
Which war is this?
Second World War. See, Roman, he started working, left home. Dad sent him to a different farmer to work when I was in 8th grade. See, then I could milk more cows. I was getting bigger. I could milk 3 cows in the morning before I go to school. And then Roman went out, and then, after I was out of school, then I worked at home, and I did day labor for farmers. You call it day labor. That you'd walk down there, and even if it was 3 miles, you'd walk down there. In the evening, you'd walk home. We never.
How long would you work?
Till 7 o'clock, something like that.
So like 12 hours or so?
Yeah.
But one of them, you stayed there, didn't you? When you worked at one farmer, you stayed there at his place.
When I was, he was pretty far away. I stayed there
And then when Tom was born?
Oh, that was in 1940. See, that was in the summer. see, then I stayed by them people. That was better way.
Yeah, so how did you get home when Tom was born, right?
I pretend like I had a attack of appendicitis, and boy, I really put on a good show. And that guy thought, sure I did. So he rushed me home, and we got home. Dad looked at me. He said, "You go upstairs." It was August 1st, and good and hot. One window on each end of the stairs. He said, "I think you'll be."
So, Dad, when did you get your first phone? What was that like? Did the phone come to your house?
No, but we
Did you have to go out to a pole?
No, we had that phone in the house, but
Did
we
you?
was when we had ours. We was 8 people on one line.
8 families.
I never forget our ring was a long and 2 shorts. You had to crank it.
So, Dad, speaking of phones, what is your experience as an adult owning your own business with a party line where we grew up and having 4 girls? What was that like?
It was okay. I started my business, fertilizer business, in 1951. And then when I had to go to service, my dad took care of it them 2 years. And it worked out good until we moved to town and the girls got bigger, and my customers all complained they could never get through to call me when they needed fertilizer, so I had to quit.
Those girls.
Who were the girls calling back then?
I don't know.
All those neighbor
You
boys?
never called to find out.
Couldn't get a call through.
Because not only did you have girls on the phone,
Yeah,
but you had 2 other families using the phone.
Yeah, here in town we was, I guess, maybe
We
2
were
or
ring
3.
free, I think.
Yeah, we didn't have as many online as we did when I was growing up.
Did you all use the phone growing up?
No. You had to pay every time you use a phone, so you wouldn't use it unless it was emergency.
Well, Grandpa, what did you guys do for fun when you were growing up? Like, did you ever have time to just be kids and play? And
Play high spy, hide and seek,
did you have neighbors close enough to like get together?
Yeah. Like at noon, our neighbor, they lived about a quarter mile from us. Every noon, after the girls had dishes done and we had the feeding at noon, we always had to water the hogs and stuff like that. Then we went to a mulberry tree. There was a mulberry tree. And we climbed in there for about 15 minutes. Then we had to be back home again and start working. That was our enjoyment.
Not much free time.
So did you have recess at school? Did you get to play then?
Yeah, we had recess in the morning at 10 o'clock, 15 minutes. And then at noon, 1 hour. And then around 2 o'clock, we had school be out at 3:30, and then we had to walk.
How old were you when you got a car? Your family car?
Well, we had a car as long as I can remember. I guess it was when I was born, probably around that time.
Wow.
They got a car. It was called a Whippet.
A what?
A Whippet.
Whip it, yeah.
That was the name of it. It was a little gray car. Yeah. We had that until 1938, then we got a 36 Chevy.
What was your first car, Grandpa? You never, that 500.
48 Honey.
Oh, yeah.
Then I bought a 50 Ford after that.
So how did you meet Mom?
Oh, we was at a wedding. We had to go to a wedding, and well, it was starting to get dark, and the lady come to me and she said, "Would you mind driving us to the wedding and to the dance? Because my husband, he can't see too good." So I had to drive him to. It was at Lakeside. It was between Breeze and Carlisle. It was the dance hall. We had to go there, and then on the way down there, the guy said, "I know a good girl for you," he said. I said, "Yeah." He said, "She's a Palmer. She's a hard worker." As soon as we get to the dance there, he said, "I'm going to show you who she is." She did show it. And Well, we danced, I guess, one or two. She wouldn't go out, not unless I'd find somebody to take Rita out. See, she was a twin, and she wouldn't go out unless her sister had a friend. Well, and I did find one guy, and here they found out they were related, so we wasn't allowed to go. Then I found another guy, and he had hernia surgery. And Rita said, I don't want somebody else hernia trouble. And then got Jerome to come, so then Jerome and Rita went there.
And you and Jerome knew each other because you were sort of neighbors.
Yeah, we were neighbors. Well, the other two guys were neighbors too.
Okay.
Yeah.
How old were you when you met Grandma?
I guess about 20.
How long did you date?
Well, from, I guess 21. Yeah, I was 21. That's right. I had my old Pontiac. That first date I had with her, and I had a radio in there, and she wanted that radio on while we was parking. And then when I wanted to leave, I had a dead battery. That's when I had the energy but he was going with Rita. So we pushed that car down the road, and then I quick jumped in it,
Popped the clutch.
put it in drive, and then it started.
Yeah.
Where did you take her on the first date?
You just got through telling me they were parking.
What else did you do?
Sounds good to me.
We had two dance halls. One that
Some things don't change.
was south, west, northeast of Breeze, so it was in the country, and then another one between Breeze and Beckmar there. So that's where all the weddings was always on a Tuesday or Wednesday.
How did you learn to dance? How did you learn to dance?
Well, we just pushed around.
Just hold on.
Well, one thing I always think is pretty nice about Mom, it's just unbelievable, is after you were hurt in the war, you were engaged like 4 years, and she waited for you not knowing if you would survive, if you would be able to provide for her. She waited 4 years.
Yeah. But see, when I come back from overseas, when I was wounded, we landed in Hawaii and then one night, and then we got to San Diego. We stayed there one night, and then they flew us. They was going to fly us to Scott, but it was snowing so bad, so we had to land in Lambert Field. Then they bussed us to Scott, and then that night that was the 7th of December there, and they said you can make one phone call to call somebody. So I called my folks, and I thought, oh shoot, I better call Ruth too. So I begged and begged one of the guys that was working there in Ruth there, and he finally let me call Ruth too. So the next morning they come and visit me. My folks did the Romans and Jerome, and then they all come and visit me there in Scott.
So Dad, tell us about what it was like in the Korean War. Tell us about when you got hurt, being in the foxhole. What was that like, to be in a foxhole? To be on the front line of the Korean War?
It started, I got to Korea as a cook.
Okay.
And we had to get some training and stuff like that.
Hold on. Were you drafted or were you dealing with?
Drafted.
You were?
Oh yeah, I was no RA.
For those of you who don't know, RA is
what
regular
RA
army.
stands.
Yeah,
No.
regular army.
No, real asshole.
That too.
Anyway, I got to Korea, and then I finally got to my company, and then the first night when I got there, it was in the evening, and then they said all the cooks and the supply had to go to the front line because the company almost got wiped out. So then supplies and cooks, they played poker all night. They told me, you walk around our tent all night and play guard. So all night I had to walk around that tent.
Did you have a gun?
No, I had a gun, but no ammo. Rusty old carbine.
Bayonet.
Yeah, they did it. Then that next morning, then they brought us to the front. And then, then that day we sat in a foxhole all day. I had one guy with me, he was a Korean. We sat there, and then at midnight, then they got us up, got a couple of us, there was 7 of them. They said, you just go to the hill, the next hill, and see if there's any enemy up there. No ammo. We went up there and had my rusty carbine. And we went up there, and we didn't see anything up there. And next morning when it was light, and they spotted us from the next hill. They sent a round of ammo.
Martyr.
One missed us just over our head, and we jumped in a little ditch there. And I jumped on top of an African American, and the other guy, he laid next to him, and I was the last one, so I jumped on top of him. And next one went on the other side of us, and the third one went right between my arm and the other guy's head. Well, then the black guy, he just got one little cut on his head. He ran down the hill and told him, I'm hurt him. Well, then the other guy, he got killed. His head got blown off. Then he ran down the hill. See,
But he was under you, right?
The black guy.
Yeah, so did he throw you off?
Yeah. Well, I
An explosion.
Oh, you blew off.
Oh, yeah, I blew off
Okay.
with that shell.
Okay.
Anyway, I had 4 Koreans pick me up then.
But when you were laid there, what was it like? I mean, those 4 Koreans didn't come right away
No,
and
it
pick
took
you up.
me quite a while. I was choking on blood. So then I finally sat up, and then I got shot through the shoulder from the next hill. At least that's what the doctor said. I didn't feel it, but I was getting so cold in my mouth. I had a hole in my cheek, and my lip was bleeding so bad and stuff. But them 4 Koreans, they picked me up, and every time they start shooting at us, then they'd drop me and they'd lay down. And finally got down to the bottom
But when
of the
they
hill.
were picking you up, these Koreans, you didn't know if they were North
No,
or
I
South.
didn't know if they was. I thought I was captured. I didn't know it because they was Koreans. I just figured they was North Koreans. I didn't know. Then when I got down the hill, they had a half track. I don't know if you know what a half track is. It's a tandem, like a tandem truck. Just them dual wheels in the back. They got tracks. It's just like a bulldozer.
Right.
Then they took me further back and then to a field hospital there, and then they wrapped me up a little so I wouldn't bleed, and then I got in a helicopter. They put me in there. And boy, that was the coldest ride I ever had. And about 2 months ago, I read in a Korean paper, somebody wrote in there that he had a ride in that helicopter, and he said that was the coolest ride he ever had.
Where did they take you in the helicopter?
They took us further to a hospital.
In Japan.
No, Korea.
Further back.
Yeah, and then from Korea there, they wrapped us up a little more, and then they flew us to Japan.
Okay.
Then I got to Japan, and then I laid there 5 days. They didn't do anything to me. And because I had a kind of a rare type of blood, and I lost so much blood, and they didn't want to waste any blood on me. So finally, after the 5th day, then they gave me blood. I got 9 units of blood.
So when you were first put in the helicopter, though, wasn't your arm just kind of hanging on? Or?
Oh, yeah.
And they didn't. And didn't one guy say, "Well, where's his arm?"
Yeah. It was there.
Yeah, but I mean, they just kind of threw it up on your stomach.
On top of me.
Yeah.
How long were you in the hospital and in recovery?
Oh, I don't remember. I laid on the bed for 6 weeks. I had to lay my arm, see that all the bones was broken. It wasn't allowed to move. I had to lay on the bed for 6 weeks with my arm on a pillow. And I went from 204 pounds to 144 in that time. When after 6 weeks, they got me up, and then I couldn't even walk.
You couldn't walk, you were so
see,
weak.
that's where on that picture there, that they helped me walk.
This one?
No, that right underneath.
Oh, right here.
Yeah, the nurses helped me walk, to learn me walk, and that's where Barney Pullman was. Yeah, met him. He all of a sudden hollered at me, and I didn't know that he was there at all. We was.
And he was a friend from home.
Yeah, we left at the same time.
Okay.
Same day we left. Yeah.
Okay.
Then I left there at Japan. I guess beginning of December. Then they sent me to Battle Creek, and then in January, then he come to Creek too. He was there a year, and then he got discharged.
How long were you in Battle Creek?
17 months. And 2 months in Japan.
17 months in the hospital? How many?
I mean,
In Battle Creek, how many different procedures did you have? Just one after the other.
Yeah, see, I had a couple of them on my eye, on my arm.
And of course, they had to sew your mouth back or your cheek back.
Yeah, well, that they did in
Japan.
So you didn't have visitors. You just kind of laid there all day. And
Yeah, well, my folks and Ruth came up to see me one time when I was in Battle Creek. But see, we got to come home once in a while. Like when they'd have surgery on me, then they couldn't give me therapy, then they'd send me home.
When you were like in Japan for that 6 weeks, did the doctors who took care of you, did they speak English? Like, were you able to communicate with them, or did they speak Japanese?
That was all Americans.
Oh, okay.
They had a couple Japanese women working there, but the nurses and doctors was all American.
When it all first went down, did you ever just feel like you were done with? Like, come to terms with it and make your peace? Or?
Yeah,
You know, one thing I have to say about Dad, all this that has happened to him, he has never once, in all these years I've known him, spoken negatively about Korea or the war and what he suffered. He never once said anything negative.
but I never was in pain. You know?
Right.
Pain that when they moved me from one hospital to the other in Japan, they put me on the back end of an old truck, and that's where I laid. And then my eye was hurting me, and I didn't know I was blind. I didn't know that. I didn't know that until I had a couple surgeries in Japan on my eye. And then all of a sudden I thought, I can't see out of it.
And through the years, Dad has had many doctors say, I can bring your sight back to you. And Dad has endured many different procedures and surgeries. Nobody has ever brought sight back to that eye.
Yeah. So when was it that the doctors found that there were maggots in your arm?
That was in Japan.
Yeah.
So tell us about the maggots.
Well, they was crawling all around in my arm.
All those little worms crawling on him.
That's when they decided we'll cut it off. And well, I was in the operating room. I had to make the X ready that it was okay to cut it off. And then all of a sudden, one doctor says, "It's a little warm on this side," he said. Then they didn't take it off.
Then they said.
But then when you were in recovery, you had to learn how to work left-handed when you've been right-handed all these years.
See, when I was hurt there in Japan for a while, and then all of a sudden, the guy next to me, he was from Canada. He said, "You want me to write a letter for you to your folks?" Well, yeah, he wanted to do that. So he done all my letter writing. I guess for at least a month. Then he got discharged, and so then I started printing. I started writing letters.
But that would take you a long time since now you were working left-handed.
Yeah.
what else do you have to do?
And learning how to write. And all of you have received cards from Dad that now say GP, and it looks like it's going like this.
Nobody can read it.
Nobody can read it anymore.
What, you mean those cards are from you?
Always addressed by somebody else, whether it's Florence or Lucy or Diane, somebody else addresses those cards. You know?
What's your next?
Oh, Dad, also tell us about vacations when you were now a family man. You know, people didn't take vacations in that day. How did you decide you were going to start taking vacations with your
I
family?
just decided I wanted to see the country because I love geography.
Yeah, you did.
So
You would get that atlas out and you would plan a route. You didn't write it down.
I didn't write it
Nobody
down.
read the map for him. He remembered the routes to take.
well, we wanted to go.
And we would take 2-week vacations. 2-week vacations. And Grandma would pack all the clothes in one trunk for 6 people. She would pack a cooler of food to eat.
I don't know.
Grandpa would push us on the swings, and Grandma would get the little stove out and cook lunch or dinner,
Little camp stove.
which I think Megan and Mark now have.
It's been passed
So it's still in the family.
Where would you guys go? I mean, you had this atlas. Would you guys do towns or
Well, we went out west a couple times.
North Dakota.
Washington, D.C.
and just camp out wherever?
Yeah. Well,
We wouldn't
We
camp.
always stayed in the hotel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but you could,
Motels.
motels. You could stay for about $5-6 a night.
And all the girls would beg for a motel with a swimming pool.
It'd be hard to find.
on. So how many rooms did you have when you were at the motel?
One.
Yeah.
How did you know where to go? Like, what was worth seeing?
Well, we went out west several years.
Things that he had heard about he'd like to see.
Just
Like
word of
he
mouth.
wanted to go, what's that area called with those 4 heads?
Mount Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore.
Thank you.
Mount Rushmore.
You know, and Grandpa, he would just plan. We would go to Colorado. We would stop by the Indian territories. Grandpa would have a plan for 2 weeks. We'd take 2-week vacations. Nobody else in town ever did this but us.
Yeah, I know. Nobody went on vacations.
And let me tell you another story about Grandpa, one that wasn't all that long ago. I mean, it's been a number of years because he's been retired like 19 years or something like this. But I can remember one time at Christmas time, we came home from Germany and we were sitting at Grandpa and Grandma's house, and Grandpa wanted to take some vacation time. You know, but for him to take vacation, he would have to call his sub to see when he wanted to work. And I can specifically remember sitting right by the phone, and Grandpa's on the phone talking to who? No, Cuckamar. Bobby Cuckamar. Bobby Cuckamar. He would be talking to Bobby Cuckamar. And he says, Bobby, I'm thinking about taking vacation. When do you think you could get off to run my route? Not like, I want to take vacation in 2 weeks. Can you run my route? When can you take vacation? You always put others first, Dad. You always were thinking of somebody else.
When I had Gene Horstman, I always had to take my vacation in August.
Because that's what Gene wanted.
He was farming. In August, he didn't have much to do, so that's what I did every year in August. That's when we had to go on vacation.
And so those were all fun times. And I know we've been here a long time. But I always remember after Mom fell and broke her hip, and you were waiting for the medics to come. And I can remember Mom being hospitalized and everything and getting the call and stuff like this. And I can remember, you know, she would want to pull out the needles and stuff. And after all Dad has been through, and it was time to put her in the nursing home because he couldn't take care of her, he says, he just stood there and bawled. He says, this is the hardest day of my life. Y'all were there, Jay, Diane, and Lucy. We were standing there. Dad says, this is the hardest day. And of course, she didn't last but a couple months. You know,
Lasted 11 weeks.
11 weeks. Grandma lived after she was hospitalized. And I can remember her last day. Everybody had been there. And I can remember everybody, we would stay with Grandma. We knew she was in hospice. And Grandpa and I, Dad and I, we got to meet with hospice, and they told us that when somebody is ready to die, they're either going to want people around them or they're not going to want anybody around. And he said he remembered his mom and dad. They chose they didn't want anybody around, and they died with nobody around them. But Mom wasn't like that. And it turned out that day, everybody got to come and see her, and everybody got to kiss her. Nobody knew it was her last day to live. But everybody got to say goodbye. Well, and that week when she was in her last week, Dad and I, we would sit there, and I'm writing stories. Dad would tell me story after story, funny stories, and we laughed and we cried, and we even read to Grandma all the stories, you know, and Grandma was sitting right there. But anyhow, when it was time for her to be in hospice, she was only in hospice, how long? About a week? No, about a day.
A day.
About a day she was in hospice.
Well, no, not even that. At noon, they said she's got to go get out of the hospital.
Okay.
And I said, well, she's going home.
Yeah.
We're just going to take her home. And then the nurse come in, oh, hospice just said they have room in one room for us where she could go in.
Yeah.
So she went in there.
So we all got to be there. And, you know, there were two of us that wanted to stay or wanted to be with Mom when she died. And two of us who did not want to be there when she died. And the two of us who wanted to be there, we were there. Mom decided to die when we two were there. And I can remember when she died, it was like 10:30 at night. I was one, I wanted to be there, and so was Diane. Jane and Lucy, they did not want to be there. They just couldn't do it. But Diane and I, we wanted to be there. And we were sitting there holding her hands 10:30 at night, talking and stuff like this. All of a sudden, I felt her spirit just leave. I knew immediately when her spirit left her body. And I can remember running to tell the nurses she just died. And of course, they called the ambulance people there, the undertaker and everything. And we said, well, we wanted to polish her nails before they took her away. And he said, you just take as long as you want. And Diane and I, we sat there and we polished Mom's fingernails. We polished her toenails. We wanted her to look good on the day that she died. Because, well, I'm not going to.
Roger, he had a talk on her funeral, and when Mary Lou wanted to know all kinds of stuff about her, I thought, well, we'll have one good story that'll make everybody laugh in church. So I said, well, years ago, when I was doing custom baling, I always had to have somebody run the tractor, and I would be packing the bales on the wagon, and Ruth was running the tractor, and we had a serious breakdown. I said, everybody's wondering, well, I told the story at lunchtime at the farmer's office too. Anyway, Roger said it, and everybody was wondering what that serious breakdown was. And I said, well, Ruth's bra straps. I had to fix it with a bale wire.
Yeah. But the other story was, you were both running a tractor, right? And then she was down the other end in the shade tree.
Oh, that was cultivating.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we used in the spring of the year. She wanted to help at the farm, so I had her on the tractor doing one thing, and I was in a different field. And here, all of a sudden, she was sitting on the end. I thought, whoa, she must have broke down.
In the shade tree.
Yeah. So I threw her down there, and I asked her what's wrong. Well, she said, horses always had a rest, and I think the tractor should have a rest.
Then life goes on again, and Dad moved on, and he met Florence. And how did you and Florence meet, and how long have you been together?
Oh, we've been a long time. I don't know. It just so happened that I just playing cards. And all of a sudden, I said, well, we got to go out together. Well, finally she said, you can come over for a beer. Oh, after the cards. I thought, well, that's okay. I went down there and son of a gun, I didn't even get a beer.
Oh. Yeah, it was more like good one. Good one. That's what I thought.
We sitting on the couch there and talking and talking.
And did the battery run down?
He said, it was 12 o'clock. And I said, I gotta go home.
Parents were Ben and Anna, and my parents were Ben and Anna, and we just, got talking.
And talked about our lives, and we had the same life pretty well.
Pretty much. Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Did you beat her at cards, or did she beat you?
Yes.
4 lone hands.
We did.
We got 23 points, which is a lot of points.
They didn't win any money.
I was going to ask, did you go Arkansas?
They were not in the money.
That's pretty sad.
I know.
Fell into it.
But still.
We beat O'Matty. That was.
Yeah. Well, anybody else have any other questions or?
Well, tell us about your first house that you built.
Oh, yeah. Tell us how you
or-
bought a house in the day, Dad.
Oh, well, we first lived in the country at a farmer. He owned a place and he was working it, but the house was vacant. He was living in a different one. We lived in the house and he had sheep. And our orders were we have to let them sheep go wherever they want. They'd all come on the porch and lay on the porch because there was shade there. We had 2 gates to open every time we went someplace. We always had to open them gates and close them because there was a pasture there. He had cattle there. Then, well, we lived there, I guess, a year and a half. And then one guy that owned a farm said, would you like to rent my farm? So we rented that farm and we lived there, I guess, from 1956 to 1960. Then the doctor told me I had to get out of dust one time my eyes. So then we moved to town, and then the next doctor that I went to, he said, dust don't bother your eyes at all. So then Tom and I started farming again after my dad retired.
But how did you buy that? That house was right over there. How did you buy that house, Dad?
Well, that was for sale. They was building it, and I went down to Frank Rickenberg and I asked him about it. Oh yeah, we could have it for $15,700. So I said, okay. We looked at it. We liked it, so we bought it. And I told him, well, I ain't got no money to pay for it now because I got it all tied up in fertilizer because it took about $100,000, in fertilizer. So he said, well, you pay me as soon as you can. I told him, well, it'll be December. Here, October, he come. He said, you think you can soon pay for something?
Now, when did you actually move, though?
We moved July the 26th.
You moved in July and you didn't make any payments.
No, we didn't pay him nothing.
And he came to you?
Well, in October, then, I had sale in October the 1st, 1960, and then I gave him some money in December. Then
That would have been in Judge Judy's day.
You'd be confident.
That would have been quite different.
Then when we built this house, I bought the lot from the same guy, and well, we didn't think about paying him at all. It was $7,000 then, the lot. And we was building that house there, and all of a sudden he come and he said, don't you think you ought to pay a little bit on that lot? Oh, I said, I forgot all about that. So then I paid him for it.
And Dad, you were telling us about well, you got the money from Frank Rickenberg to buy the house, right?
Not the money, but he built the house.
Huh?
He didn't get the money from him,
No, I
right?
didn't get no money.
No, you didn't get the money, but you owed Frank the money.
Yeah, I owe
Like, how much did your first house cost?
$15,700.
$15,700. And you didn't pay any money for several months.
Not until December
And then
or October. then.
when you did buy, now you got your money because you got your fertilizer stuff sold, money came in.
Yeah.
Did you pay them all in one lump sum?
Well, I gave him some in October when we had sale, and then the rest in December.
And
And
so you
bought
just
it.
paid cash, then, I mean,
Yeah.
then you're done.
Yeah, we bought it in April, the house here.
Okay.
And then there we started building home when Cody was born.
I remember when Cody was
The
born.
drywall in the hallway. I wasn't very good at it. You had a good monitor to cover the
It might be just a little
He
young.
made some extra holes.
Yeah.
Dad, tell us how, like, Shooty was like the town bank. Even though he
Yeah.
owned the town store,
Them days,
to
the
close our
farmers,
truck
they all
windows.
brought their eggs to Shirley, but he wouldn't get the money for it. He'd keep the money. And it's just like a banker, you know. When you needed money for something, you had to go and ask him, can I have my money? I'll never forget when my dad bought a car in 1938. He wanted to get his money from Shitty. And no, he said, you don't need a car. Dad said, yeah, I want it. So that was it. Dad didn't bring no more eggs down there. And he had money.
But isn't that something how the town store owner kept your money?
Did he actually have a safe, or was it just like behind
He
it?
invested.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and Dad says everybody trusted the store owner more than the bank.
Wow.
Wow.
And your mattress? You trusted him more than your mattress?
Backyard.
Oh, in the backyard. I'm sorry.
So did the town have a bank, but you guys just all trusted this guy with more than the bank?
There was no bank.
See, in 1933, I believe it was, then a lot of banks went bankrupt during the Depression. That's why a lot of them would not trust the bank because they lost too much money. So they'd bring it to the Mr. Shorty here in town.
Did your dad ever lose money in the Great Depression with the banks? 'Cause-
No, he didn't have no money.
In the bank?
See, he had well, he bought that farm, I guess, we moved on it in 1929. My grandpa built that farm up for his son, and then his son died, and then my grandpa wanted my folks to move on there. Well, actually, the boy that died, he told my grandpa that he wanted my folks to live in there, so they moved on there. So that's how we moved back to St. Rose. Otherwise, we were living in Davidson, and we actually were supposed to go to close to Jimtown on a farm there. My other grandpa owned that farm. We was going to move there, but then being city built this all up as a brand new place. And everything on there.
When did you start making your own investments?
But
When did you start investing in stocks and things?
well, as soon as I had money, I always gave it to my dad, and he put it on CDs for me. And I guess in buying stocks and stuff, soon after we moved to town in the early 60s, something like that. See, then I kind of slowed down with fertilizer after I got on the mail route. I started on the mail route in 64. Then I gave half my route to, half my business to a guy right here in town here. And he went bankrupt on that, so then I had to take it back again. Then in 1970, then my one uncle died that was hauling all the fertilizer for me. He died, so then I gave his business to his son. So I went out completely, and that was when the girls was on the phone.
Did you guys ever go out to eat? I mean, did people eat out?
Very seldom.
We would take joy rides on Sunday afternoons to go look at crops, the farmers' crops. And the big treat was to stop for a malt. That was the big treat. A chocolate malt.
What was the place called that you would go to? And I guess it wasn't a McDonald's or Steak and Shake, was it?
No, it was Trenton
Trenton, they had a
ice cream place.
ice cream there. It was only open in summer.
Dad, after all this living that you've done, 89 years, and you've experienced a lot.
Yeah,
Do that.
89 years.
You've seen a lot.
Can remember
What kind of advice can you give us?
Oh, save your money. You don't want to go through the depression like we went through. It was horrible.
Yes.
But we didn't starve, I must say that. We always had plenty cornbread. All the cornbread you want.
What about that good old tasty lard? What was that?
No, that was good. Eggs, you only allowed one egg a meal.
Well, because it would take almost a whole dozen.
Well,
They
yeah.
had to take them to town to sell my groceries
You
for
get the money.
Yeah.
Yeah, farmers was lucky that they had milk, eggs, and meat, you know. Or the towners,
And
you know,
garden.
they didn't have that. Yeah,
and
the
garden.
garden.
So
We was lucky, at least we could raise something to eat. But a lot of people, they couldn't eat at all. They didn't have no money.
And so you've never been in debt in all your life, other than when you bought that house and you owed
And
a
when
little
Lucy
bit.
didn't make that payment.
Had to pay interest.
I didn't sleep for a couple of nights. Still have a credit card.
I got a question. What about, so you started your fertilizer business. What made you go into the fertilizer business? Because, I mean, you came back from the war. Were you in the fertilizer business before the war?
Yeah, well, I had worked for a guy that was in the fertilizer business. And I seen there was quite a bit of money to me making that. And he always said, boy, if I die, what would the St. Rose people do? He said, yes, he was selling fertilizer. I thought, well, I'll show you that we can keep it going without you. So I went in the fertilizer business. I decided one Sunday afternoon, I wrote a letter to the fertilizer company that I got a letter back saying, a salesman to come out and see you. Well, I waited a month and he didn't come. So then I drove down there and talked to him. And, oh yeah, they said, you can have it. They gave me a dealership. And then they want to know what bank are you working for. I didn't have no checking account because I still owe my dad on the car. I told him it was the bank. I went home and told my dad that they want to know what kind of bank I had for a checking account. I said, David, I ain't got no money there at all. So he gave me $1,500. He said, I gave Roman $1,500 when he got married, so I'll give you $1,500 now. He gave me that money and I brought that down there. That's when I started.
Wow.
So how did you buy $100,000 worth of fertilizer?
Well, you keep on building up, you know.
But did you buy that on the credit? Is that
No.
What did you start out with?
He never had any
You could get credit from the company.
Yeah.
But if you would pay it within 30 days, you would get it, this percent, I believe it was off.
cash?
But I just owe them until I would have enough money in.
And Dad, you were just telling us about how one time you wanted to save that 10%. Tell us that story.
Yeah, I went to the bank and I wanted to know if I could borrow money for 10 days. Oh yeah, they could borrow me, but then I had to bring my deed of the house and everything down. I thought, the hell with that. I just forgot about paying that for a couple of days.
How'd you get started with the mail route? Did you know someone that did that?
That was a long, drawn affair. That the guy at Trenton died. That was on the mail route. He died in 1963 in the spring. And then the mail carrier that was our carrier, he said, "Why don't you put in for it?" So I did. And I did put in for it. And well, we had to take our test, and there was 36 of us taking the test, and you had to live in Trent or be on Trent Route. And actually, I was living on Breeze Route, but when we moved off the farm, the mail carrier said, "Why don't you just leave your mail at Trenton and you go to your dad anyway every day?" And he was on Trenton Route, so we left it on that. So then we had to take that test. At that time, it was political. You had the Democrats were in power, and the Democrats had to appoint somebody, and the top 3 of us or the top 4 were Republicans. I was the 4th one, but they forgot to give me credit for a disabled veteran, which is 5 points. So I wrote Congressman Dirksen, and I wrote the disabled veterans in part of it, and they got that I got that 5 points on my side. So then I was top, and then there's 2 other ones, Republican. So the Democrats had to pick a Republican, and they didn't want to do it. They stalled it off for about a year, and finally then everybody was kind of getting after the Republicans why they weren't appointing them. And finally then the congressman called me that he appointed me, or he sent me a letter. And then right here in this old building here, we had a meeting, and the fire district was starting out, and they wanted to get a grant. And that guy come here for the meeting on account of that grant. And he said, "Today I appointed one of your men as a rural carrier at Trent." He said, "Oh," who that was. And, he didn't say who or nothing. And then when he went out, there were 6 guys went out with him, and they never came back in the meeting. And I thought right away, oh boy, it was all 6 Democrats. So it took a while, and I already had got the appointment, so I went to the post office and I said, "I'm supposed to start." The postmaster said, "I didn't get no word that you're supposed to start." So it took 8 weeks, and I wrote my congressman, and he wrote me back. I said, "Why can't I start?" And he wouldn't tell me. And we went back and forth, and finally, one night I was in the field cultivating, and Ruth come running down there, and she said, "Congressman Haig from Breeze called, and you've got to come to see him tonight." And I said, "Why?" "Well, he wants to see you." So I went down there. He said, "Well, you're going to get appointed, but I want you to promise the 6 guys from St. Louis," he named them, "go down there and tell them from now on you're gonna, and your whole family is gonna vote Democrat." Well, I went to them the next morning, went to him and told him about it. He said, "I said, you can kiss my ass." I went home, and here when I got the mail, I got the appointment in the mail that I was supposed to. But see, that Haig had got word that I was going to get it, but he wanted me to promise them 6 guys that we was going to vote them. I won't tell you too many Democrats.
What do you say to them anyway?
Okay, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up, unless somebody has some questions that they want to ask you.
Save your money.
Yeah,
Save your money. And Dad, you've done a great job of
Hope
teaching
that
us.
you never get into a depression like that.